Good evening. Let us start the session. The session title is How to Control Mind. Let us start with a small prayer. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Krishna, first of all, let me thank Alok for raising this query, which became the topic of our session today. Thank you, Alok. So he was curious to know how to control mind. And this is something which is a topic of great interest across ages. Let's see what Krishna has to say about this to Arjuna. So let's start with the famous verse of Gita by Krishna, where he says, Shraddhavan anusuyascha shrunyadapi yo naraha so api mukta subha lokan prapnuyat punya karmanam. What Krishna is saying is that one who listens to with faith and without envy to Gita becomes free from sinful reactions and attains the auspicious planets. That is a spiritual abode where the pious dwell. That is the power of listening to Gita. Imagine if we are able to read Gita, then we will have intellectual devotion to Krishna. If you can preach Gita, then you are the most dearest to Krishna because you are helping spread the word of Gita to others. So with this brief introduction, let's move to the first slide of the day. Why is it difficult to control the mind? Now, this is something which is the topic of the day. I have defined a few points on the left side box where I say mind is unique because it is fickle. It doesn't stay on anything for long. Desires are endless and the mind gets distracted within a few seconds. The mind is turbulent, obstinate, very strong. Do you all agree with this, or you feel no, my mind is unique and I don't have any of these problems? You all agree?
Very true, sir.
Okay. So now I also found a nice acronym for mind, which typically defines how the mind functions within us. So M stands for magnifies problems. A small thing can be blown out of proportion. I, it imagines pleasures. N, neglects opportunities. And D, denies reality. So this is the acronym of mind. If you were to go back and look at all our Shastras, it is fascinating to note that all Shastras, all scriptures, including Gita, focus on control of the mind. Because our character, our human behavior is all defined by our mind. It is a source of thought, word, and deed. What Krishna has to say about in 6.35, Krishna says, Sri Bhagwan Vacha, asamshayam mahabhavo, manodurnigraham chalam, abhyasena tu kaunteya, vairagyena cha griyate. The expansion of this verse is, Krishna said, O mighty armed son of Kunti, it is undoubtedly difficult to curb the restless mind, but it is possible by suitable practice and detachment. Just listen to this, He's saying it's not impossible to control your mind, but then you will have to suitably practice, and practice takes effort. And he says by detachment. He's not saying by attachment. He's not saying if you follow your senses, you will be able to control your mind. He is saying, please try and detach yourself. And just a minute. Let me see, where is the... Now, the message of detachment, how do we understand it? Detachment means you come away from the senses and connect with the Lord. In short, fix your mind on the Lord. So the word yoga is very popularly used, very widely used in Gita. In fact, it is said, it is mentioned 140 times throughout the 18 chapters. And the yoga is defined as to connect with the Lord. And Krishna tells us three pathways to connect with the Lord. So we are free to choose which suits us. Karma yoga, where dhyana yoga is part of karma yoga. Then bhakti yoga, which Krishna says is the easiest. What is bhakti yoga? Devotional service. And third, the last 6 chapters, that is 13th chapter to 18th chapter, covers Gnana yoga. So we have got a choice to choose between the 3 yogas. So if you connect with the Lord, you will be able to attain detachment. You'll understand how to practice detachment. Now, let's understand the process to control the mind. I broadly define these as 3 steps, very simple. First is identify, understand how the mind functions. So if you know what our mind goes through, then you are a step closer to understand how to control the mind. Step 2, engage the mind in terms of getting knowledge which will help us control the mind. We should be aware that it is not easy to control our mind, because if it were so easy, then I don't think Arjuna would have asked Krishna this question. Please guide me. Please tell me how to control the mind. So it is something which is very complex. So we have to read scriptures. So I say engage the mind through Guru. You approach a spiritual master to explain to you how to do it. Go through Shastras like Gita and understand what these Shastras tell us as to what should be the approach. So first is identify, understand. Second is engage the mind through scriptures, Guru, Sadhu, Shastra. And the third step is apply the knowledge gained to move to the higher taste. Param Drushta Nuyartate. This is what we had discussed during our Sthita Prajna class, where we said, you can be a man of steady wisdom, live in this world, and live happily ever after, if you are able to control your mind. Now, if you think, if I am able to do these 3 things, then is it easy? I would say it is not easy. That's why Krishna is cautioning us very clearly, saying, practice it and practice it throughout your life. It's not a one-day story. It's not a one-month story. Now, let's look at an example of a very pure devotee, King Bharata, son of Arjuna, who was he took over the kingdom after Pandavas retired, and he ruled the earth as an excellent king, as an emperor. And as he crossed the age of Vanaprastha, he said, now I'm going to retire. I'm going to go to the forest and concentrate on praying to the Lord. I'll do penance to the Lord, and I will attain him by remembering him at the time of my death. So he was in his ashrama, living in his forest, and concentrating hard to pray to God. One day, his penance was disturbed because there was a roar of lion, and he opened his eyes to see a deer running for dear life, because the lion was chasing the deer. And out of desperation, it had nowhere else to go. It jumped into the river to save its life. So King Bharata was watching this, and then he got up from his ashrama and rushed towards the river to see what happened to the deer. And as expected, the deer died. And to his shock, the deer was carrying a baby. It gave birth to the baby and died. So Bharat Maharaj took pity. He picked up the baby fawn, brought it to its ashram, and started looking after it. A few months passed. He got attached to the deer. And then the time for him to leave this world came. And his thoughts at that time were more attached to the deer, the baby deer, than remembering Lord Krishna. and he passed away. And you will be surprised to know that King Bharata, such a pure devotee, who had done, who throughout his life had prayed, who had led a life of ideal, the way the scriptures had recommended. But then at the time of death, he made a fundamental mistake of allowing his mind to get attached to the baby deer. And he became a deer in his next life. So the purpose of sharing this story is we should not be allowing the mind to get into this slippery slope of getting attached to anything. Anything material is an attachment. The more distance you keep from material attachment, the more successful you are towards detachment. So with this, let us move to the next slide. Here, I want to bring in a new concept. One is we look at scriptures, we look at how in this world we could take examples to learn how you can control your mind. This example is of a ventriloquist. I don't know how many of you have heard of ventriloquist. Let us listen to this humorous clip and then continue the session.
Sir, the video is not audible, sir.
Not audible?
No, sir.
All of you can't hear?
Yes, sir, not hearing.
I see. What could be the problem? Let me ask Santosh, Alok, Neville.
I can see the video.
Video
hear
we
it?
can
Some
see
other
it,
video.
but we cannot hear. Probably.
I hear the video, yeah.
Share the system audio. Then only we could hear it.
Yes, you're right.
Alok, you have to press the here, use your computer audio.
No, we have done it. What you have to do it.
You have to do it at your end.
I have to do it, is it?
Yes, yes.
Yeah, sir.
One second.
आपको करना
Let me
पड़ेगा. Oh, you have to do it.
pause this. So please tell me what you want me to do.
शिवेंदु बताओ सर को.
Sir, you have to share your computer audio. There would be an option.
Computer audio, show taskbar.
Can you click on the 3 dots which is visible, sir? I
Yeah.
guess it is.
Yes.
It's
Share sound.
Yeah, share sound. Correct.
Okay. Let me play it now then.
Yes, now it is audible.
Ladies and gentlemen, would you please welcome my friend
Audible?
Sam.
Audible.
So this is Sam Taylor. Hello, not me then. Oh my word, what the heck? Sam, here we are, America's Got Talent. America's Got Talent. Look, look, look. Who are these people? These are the judges. They're staring. It's rude. They're staring. Yeah, wait. What? Wait. They're all staring at you. Really? Yeah, they're looking at your mouth. Really? Yeah, they're all looking to see if your mouth is moving. Really? Yes, that you can't tell that way because sometimes his mouth doesn't move. My mouth doesn't move. And you wonder where the heck is the sound coming from?
All of you can hear now, na?
Tonight.
Yeah, sir. Now it is audible. sir.
Not talk when I'm
Okay.
talking. Don't worry, you're not that good. Now, hey, what? Look at the ladies. What? Mel! Hello. Heidi.
Hi.
Hello. How about you two ladies coming back to my suitcase? That
don't
is
fit.
the luggage of love. You know, once you've had puppet, you never go back. Too far. I apologise. Time out. That was too much. Wait, what? You want to come back out? No, I'm going to move on. Please let me come back out, please.
That's great.
Just ignore him. Just ignore him. Okay. Okay. Look. Look. Stop copying me. Stop copying me. Look. Look. Seriously. Seriously. Stop it. Stop that. Stop it. Stop that. Stop it. Stop that. Stop it. You're pathetic. You're pathetic. You're an idiot. You're an idiot. Ooh. Ooh. I can't do that. No.
So the purpose of showing this video was, see how a ventriloquist, it's a practice skill. He controls the doll. And we can't see the ventriloquist opening his mouth as well. But the doll talks. So this is exactly how our mind functions. It makes us do. Oh, what happened?
Good evening to
You can see the screen now.
My name is Paul Zerdin.
Nice to meet you. Welcome to America's Got Talent.
Thank you. It's fantastic to be here.
And what is your act? What is your talent?
I'm going to do some
It will go into playing that again. So I will not go into the slide, but I'll explain to you. The purpose of showing that video was,
connect headphone.
so the ventriloquist, through his skill, is able to make the doll perform. I hear some noise. Can all of you go on mute, please? Thank you. So what is the message and what is the learning in this is, we should not be the doll. We should be the ventriloquist.
Where's
We
the box? Box there.
Now is in again. Can I request all of you to go on mute, please? Yeah, thank you. So we should be the ventriloquist and not the doll. So we should make the mind do what we want. That is the way to understand how we can control the mind. Now let's look at the next slide. Here, we spend time to understand what is the Gita conception of mind. So our existence is defined as at three levels. We are the body, the gross body that you see in the outer circle. Then you have a subtle body, which is mind, intelligence, ego. And then you have soul, that is the user. So the mind, intelligence, and ego are not material. It is something which even science cannot understand till today. And soul represents our consciousness. So if you see this verse, it says, this 6.34, Chanchalam hi mana Krishna, Pramati balavad drudam, Tasyaham nigraham manye, Vayor iva sudushkaram. The living entity, thus taking another gross body, obtains a certain type of ear, tongue, nose, and sense touch, which are I think there is this thing here. Let me read this verse again. 6.34. Chanchalam hi mana Krishna, Pramati balavadrudam, Tasyaham nigraham manye, Vayor iva sudushkaram. So Arjuna is such a great archer, pure devotee. He's telling Krishna, for the mind is restless, turbulent, obstinate, and very strong, O Krishna. And to subdue it, it seems to me more difficult than controlling the wind. He says, I can control the wind, but not my own mind, which is located within me. So that represents a challenge to all of us. So why is this? So if you see Ramanujacharya, who has written a bhashya, a commentary on Gita, he says, mind goes through 3 steps before it does anything. If there is a thinking, which is based on objectives, through which our perception of the world is formed, feeling, which is subjective, which is the emotional part of the mind, and willing intention, which is the action part of the mind. And he also says that feeling is the most powerful action in our mind, which is fueled by imagination. So if you want to control the mind, the message is try and emotionally ask the mind to do your bidding, not you listening to the mind. Now, one is you look at what Gita has said. How do you understand this? What is body? What is subtle body? What is ego? What is soul? If I were to give you an example from this modern world, let's look at a computer. So you have hardware, which is the body. You have software, which is the subtle body, which has the mind, intelligence, ego equivalent, and soul, user. So we use the computer to do a lot of things. So this is the nearest description to explain to you how the mind functions. So mind is the software within us. So we are the program writers. So it goes without saying that if we wish to, we can control the mind. Now, the purpose of giving this background is we should be aware as to what is our mind. What did we say? There are 3 steps to control the mind. One is identify, understand. Second is engage in Guru Sadhu Shastra. Third, apply the knowledge to ensure that you get the higher taste to control the mind. So we are in that stage, understanding what mind is. So mind is, in scientific terms, defined as seat of intellectual capacity. It is the seat of intelligence, seat of reason. But science doesn't really understand what this mind is, because can you see the mind? You can see the brain, but you can't see the mind. It will be interesting for all of you to know that we have even now preserved the brain of Einstein. It's there in a museum because scientists believe that one day we will be able to find out what made Einstein such a great genius. Let's take another metaphor to understand how mind functions. Mind is like a blotting paper. So what does a blotting paper do? It keeps absorbing. So mind is a blotting paper which has 5 sources of information through 5 senses, and it keeps recording the impressions which will be used at some point in time in our lifetimes. In the next verse I will show you, it's a verse from the 15th chapter where Krishna compares to give us an understanding of how mind is. He says mind is a screen. It's like a TV screen. Constantly the thoughts are being focused and shown on the screen. It's like, if you subscribe to any app on our mobile phone or any site on our laptops, you keep getting notifications. Similarly, mind keeps giving us constant messages. It comes through as thoughts. So we should, now what do we do for a notification? We accept what we want. We reject what we don't want. So this is how the mind functions. Let's go forward. I think I had shown this slide during our last Gita Wisdom session on Sthita Prajna. And you will appreciate that I'm showing this here again because this slide contains the most confidential knowledge for us to understand. So we had an example where we saw body, subtle body, and the subtle body consists of mind, intelligence, and ego. Now we are going a deep step further. So Krishna is giving us this explanation of a chariot, which is being controlled by 5 horses. Generally, you have a chariot which is driven by 1 horse. And as a driver, it's quite easy to control the chariot if you have 1 horse. But here, since we have 5 senses, our chariot is controlled by 5 horses. And the mind is the rein. Through the rein, you can control the senses. Who is the charioteer? That's our intelligence. And who is the user? That's our soul, Atma. And the biggest self-realization is, or it can happen when the mind accepts that Paramatma is located within us. He's not anywhere else outside. He is within us. That is self-realization. So when mind accepts a thing, it is realization. It is so difficult to make the mind to realize. It just keeps pushing it, saying that, oh, well, show me, show me. Intelligence is quite controllable, because intelligence goes by comprehension. It's like saying, I will read Gita. By reading Gita, will you understand Gita? No. You'll have to apply that. You'll have to analyze that. Only then you can understand Gita. So that's where the role of mind comes in. So in this sloka, Krishna says, Shrotram chakshu sparshanam cha rasanam grahanam evacha adhisthaya manas chayam visayan upasevate. The living entity, thus taking another gross body, obtains a certain type of ear, tongue, nose, sense touch, which are grouped about the mind. He thus enjoys a particular set of sense objects. So mind is the integrator of all senses. It is the power center. That's the reason why we should control the mind. And we should use our intelligence to control the mind. And Krishna is saying, you can control the mind through control of senses. If you were to take an example of how these senses are, they are good because each of these senses helps us to live in this world. But it's like a snake. You know, you can live with the senses, but you should be aware that it also has a poisonous teeth. If you don't take out the poisonous teeth, these snakes can become dangerous. And if you were to see this example, it becomes very clear in your minds that if I have to control my mind, I have to control my 5 senses. Controlling 1 is difficult. Controlling 5 is 5 times more difficult. That's why it becomes a challenge. Now, all our emotions are originating from our soul. Soul is pure. Soul is eternal. But the problem happens because mind intervenes because of impressions. Now, how do you understand this? What trick the mind plays on us is like, let's all imagine a child who's sitting with his parents watching TV. And the child is enjoying the TV because there is Cartoon Network which is going on the TV. And parents suddenly switch channels and they say that I want to see a horror show. Immediately the horror show starts playing and you can see the change of emotion in the child's mind. The child gets frightened. Now, what's the reality? The child is in the same room. The child is sitting in the same comfort of its living room with his parents. But the challenge is the TV screen has switched to horror show, and as a result of which the child becomes afraid. So this is exactly the way mind plays a trick on us. It's current reality. It's not eternal reality. The moment the parents switch off the TV or change the program, the child is back to normal because it's ensconced safely in the living room along with its parents. So this is how mind creates a current reality which can divert us from the path that we would like to adopt. And what's the path we want to do? What's the path to self-realization? The Atma has to realize the Paramatma, the super soul within us. How is it possible? Krishna has said it's possible through Karma Yoga, Jnana Yoga, or Bhakti Yoga. So mind can play tricks to ensure that we forget our purpose and get diverted. Now, from this background, so you have understood how the mind is and what the way the mind functions. We now look at 5 verses from the 6th chapter, which is titled Dhyana Yoga, or which is also known as Ashtanga Yoga. So in this, Krishna tells Arjuna through these 5 verses, the essence of how to control the mind, which again links back to originally what I said: identify, understand. Second step is engage in Guru Sadhu Shastra. And third is apply the knowledge to develop higher taste to control the mind. So let's look at the first verse. Very interesting verse. And you will see that Atma is used 6 times here. Let's go to this verse. Udhared Atmana Atmanam Na Atmanam Avasadayet Atmaiva hi Atmano Bandhur Atmaiva Ripur Atmanaha. So 6 times Krishna is using the word Atma. That shows you the importance of Atma. And here Atma is referring to body, senses, mind, and soul. It's not always the soul. And what's the meaning of this? One must deliver himself with the help of his mind and not degrade himself. the mind is the friend of the conditioned soul and his enemy as well. So mind can play dual roles. That's the message that Krishna is saying. And what's the essence of this verse? The essence of this verse is controlled mind is a friend. In 6.6, he says, we go through both the verses and then understand what's the message coming out from these two verses. Bandhur atma atmanas tasya yena atmaiva atmanah jitaha anatmanas tu shatrutve vartet atmaiva shatruvat. For him who has conquered the mind is the best of friends. But for one who has failed to do so, his mind will remain the greatest enemy. So, if you look at 6.5, Krishna is emphasizing the word he. Atmaiva hi atmano bandhur. What is the emphasis here? He says mind control is must. So if you don't control your mind, you have no hope of making progress. How to control the mind? It is to be trained. We have to understand how the mind functions, and then we should develop knowledge through Guru Sadhu Shastra engagement. Why we should do this? That's the only way that you can deliver the human being, each jiva, each atma, from the mire of material existence, the repeated cycle of birth and death. So that's only possible if you're able to control the mind. He says controlled mind is a friend. Why? Because the mind then follows the direction of super soul. It exactly follows what is the guidance that Krishna gives to us in Gita. It helps us detach, because the way to control our mind, Krishna has said, is practice and detachment. How to detach? By making mind your friend, by controlling your mind. And what's the result? Elevation. You can be a self-realized person living in this world. Uncontrolled mind is an enemy, which is what is coming forth in 6.6. So the mind plays dual roles. It's a double role hero that you have inside each one of us. If it is an enemy, it becomes a tormentor. If it is your friend, it becomes a mentor. So undisciplined mind is our greatest enemy. So you need to practice. You need to put in efforts to ensure that you harness the strength of the mind and not be a victim of the weakness of the mind. The weakness of the mind is attraction towards senses. The strength of the mind is it is powerful. It can do what you want. It can help you win any battle, provided you guide it in the right direction. So what is the flip side of uncontrolled mind? The mind is tortured, attracted by 6 enemies which sit in each one of us. I have named 3 here. You have lust, you have anger, illusion, greed, jealousy, what have you. So these are constantly present in us. And if you allow the mind to focus on them, then you have lost control in the mind. And what happens? The result is degradation, attachment, entanglement, bondage. So we should try and see that we control our mind. Now, one is when you look at these verses and you listen to the explanation, you feel that, I think if I am disciplined enough, I will be able to control my mind. Let's look at an example to share, to gain insights as to how mind becomes your friend. So a few years ago, there lived a farmer who was in his farm, and he had a prized family possession, which was an antique watch. So one day, he suddenly realized he was searching for the watch and he didn't find the watch. So he realized that he has lost the watch. So he thought that, okay, maybe I was in the barn when I was wearing it last time. Let me go and search for it there. I will find it. He goes to the barn, searches. He doesn't find the watch. Then he is a little worried. So what he says, okay, there are a few kids who are playing by the farms. Let me go and call them and take their help to find the watch. So the kids are quite happy. He says, I'll host a nice treat if you are able to help me find the watch. The kids really take to it excitedly. They go around, they said, it's very easy. We'll find it for you in few minutes. But then disappointing, they were not able to find the watch. The kids come back and say, sorry, farmer uncle, I can't, or we can't find the watch. So the farmer is disappointed. He's almost about to give up and go back home. When suddenly one kid comes to him and says, if you give me a chance, I want to make one more attempt. The farmer says, I have nothing to lose. Please go ahead. So the kid goes and he is in the barn for a few minutes. And then he comes back and shows the farmer uncle the watch. The farmer is surprised. The farmer asks, what did you do? How did you find the watch? The child says, I realized that the watch makes a ticking sound. So if I remain silent and sit inside the barn, I can definitely pick up the ticking sound. And I did the same thing. The direction from which the sound was coming, I went and searched. I was able to find the watch. So the moral of the story is, if you allow the mind to silence itself, if you allow the mind to stop sending us a constant bombarding of thoughts, like notifications that we are used to, the mind becomes your friend. It became a friend which looked an impossible task of finding the watch in the barn amongst the hay. The guy was able to achieve it. So that's how you can make your mind your friend and achieve what goals you want to achieve. With these 2 verses, let's move to the next set of verses. We have another 3 verses more to go, which are most important for us to understand how to control the mind. In this verse, Krishna says, this is 6.24. I would request each of you to go through these verses, go through the translation, or go through this entire chapter of Dhyana Yoga so that you completely get the understanding of what Krishna is trying to tell us and why Krishna is emphasizing Bhakti Yoga is important. So in 6.24, Krishna says, Sa nischayena yoktavyo yogo anirvinna chetasa sankalpa prabhavan kamams tyaktva sarvan achesataha manasaivendriya gramam viniyamya samanataha. One should engage oneself in practice of yoga with undeviating determination and faith. Watch the words, deviation, determination and faith. One should abandon without exception, no exceptions allowed, all material desires born of false ego and thus control all the senses on all sides by the mind. If even one horse were not to follow the path, then the entire chariot can get derailed. So the possibility of mind control happens only if we are able to control all our 5 senses. What is the essence of this? Determination and no deviation. That's the understanding that Krishna is giving us. He says that we must protect our consciousness, our soul, from worldly desires. And spiritual regulation is protective, not restrictive. Let's understand these 2 statements which are coming out of this shloka. So for determination, if you go through Gita, this example is given, a very powerful example. Take the learning, don't go into the details. The story is, once there was a sparrow which laid eggs on the ocean shore. And it was searching desperately for a safer place to shift the eggs because it knew the ocean waves could wipe the eggs away. True to its fear, the ocean waves came and the sparrow eggs were all taken inside by the ocean wave. The sparrow came back and it was desperately searching to find, trying to search to find the eggs. And it realized that it is late. The ocean wave has already taken the eggs away. It is sad, depressed as a mother. She goes to the ocean and cries, pleads, begs, Mother Ocean, please give me back my eggs. The ocean says, I can't give it to you, sparrow. You should have been careful. Why did you lay the eggs on the ocean shore? You know waves come and take it away. Sparrow says, I made a mistake. Please pardon me. But then it's not possible. Ocean says, nothing doing. The sparrow says, well, I am determined to get my eggs back, whatever is the cost. Now, if you don't listen to me, I'm going to challenge you to say that I am a small sparrow, I'm a small bird, but I will use my beak, take out all the water from the ocean, empty you, and take my eggs out. That's my determination. The ocean laughs and says, I think you're talking about an impossible task, but if you want to do it, you go ahead. And the sparrow starts the work. It is completely focused on using its small beak to take drops of water away, and it is thinking in its mind that I will be able to empty the ocean. And this, people laugh at it, people jeer at it and say that, well, this sparrow doesn't know what it's up to. And but then the sparrow continues doing this day after day. And this story spreads across the three worlds, and it also reaches Vaikuntha, where Garuda, the Vahana, the vehicle of Krishna, resides. Garuda came to know of this, and Garuda rushes down to earth and says, my dear sister Sparrow, I understand your pain. Let me request the ocean on your behalf and try. I want to help you. And the Garuda goes to the ocean and offers sincere prayers and says, please, for once, pardon the mistake and give the eggs back. And the ocean realizes, if Garuda, who is the vehicle of the Lord himself, can come and plead, then I don't have to be so stiff. Let me give the eggs back. So the moral of the story is, there are challenges like the sparrow faced. We will face. There are senses. Now the sparrow knew that, I have to shift my eggs to a safer place. But in that split second, the disaster happened and the ocean took the eggs away. So it's not all lost. Okay, we make mistakes, but we should not deviate from the path. And the path is, we have to work towards self-realization, realize the Paramatma within us. And this is how you should take learning that I want to be a sparrow in my life to overcome, to, let us say, prevent the emotions to get the better of me, the best of me. It's I who, as a ventriloquist, will control my mind and not the reverse way around. Let's go to the next verse. Sorry, there is one more this thing here. Scriptural regulation is protective and not restrictive. This is a very important point. All of us today believe that reading scriptures, oh, well, it's old fashioned. I have no time. I can't understand. How do I implement? All these things come in the way of us opening a Gita and going through it and understanding the wisdom of life. The way to understand this is, let's say we all live today in cities, we have our flats, and we're all very cautious and careful about security. So we go for multi-layer security. You have a CCTV camera, you have a security guard in the lobby, you have a security guard at the gate, then you have a security door, you have a video door phone, etc., etc. Why we are doing all these things? Because we want to be safe. Now, if you look at it from a robber's perspective, this safety is restrictive. He says, well, this is more well protected than a prison. I can't get him. So that's his view. Now, we are trying to comment on the scriptures by sitting outside without making an attempt. But what is the scripture trying to actually share with us? It is like we, as a flat owner, sitting inside the house, feeling safe because we have created multi-layers of security. This knowledge is there in the scriptures. And what is that which is lacking is our effort to open the scriptures, read, understand, and implement. We just keep saying, oh, well, I don't know how to swim this challenging samsara bhava sagara. Well, what effort have you done to understand how to swim through? What effort have you done to control your mind, to find solutions? So that is the meaning of this verse, that you should control without exception and seek higher taste to control your mind. Let's look at the next verse. This is 6.25. A very, very interesting verse. Sanai sanair uparamed buddhya dhruti gruhitaya atma samstham manakrutva na kinchid api chintayet. Here, the essence of this verse is, it takes time to be perfect. We don't have to lose hopes. It's a lifelong journey. If it was so easy to be a devotee, if it was so easy to control our minds, then I don't think anyone in this world would have ever faced a problem on this subject. And Krishna is honestly sharing this with Arjuna. He says, gradually, step by step, sanai sanair, one should become situated in trance by means of intelligence sustained by full conviction, and thus the mind should be fixed on the self alone and should think of nothing else. So he says a step-by-step process. Don't lose patience, don't lose hope. You will achieve it if you are at it. So here the Gita is urging us to use our intelligence to restrain our mind. How do we do this? Now the desires are incessant. We saw in our Chittaprajna session where desires are compared to rivers and the rivers keep flowing into the ocean. So you can't stop them. You have to accept the fact. What we can do is, we call it the 3 R's. You redirect these thoughts, you reconstruct the thoughts, you restrict the thoughts. This is the only way that you can control your mind, you can discipline your mind. Mind takes the path of least resistance. So if you put a barrier in your mind not to go towards these senses, the attraction gets reduced. That's the reason why in scriptures, there is so much of emphasis on regulative principles. And the 4 regulative principles are: don't eat non-vegetarian, it's not the right food for us, don't drink, don't gamble, don't have illicit sex. Because these are things which can derail you, which can lead to an uncontrolled mind. So regulation is the best way of controlling the mind. Let's look at how it can be applicable even in today's world. This story is from Google. So Google, you all know, is one of those most happening places, the best places to work for. And they found to their challenge that when they gave all the facilities under the sun to their employees, there was one challenge the employees faced. And that was they were getting obese. They were putting on weight, and their health was getting into an area of worry. Insurance premiums were getting affected. So the Google management said, why is this happening? Should we use one of the R's, restrict, restrain, remove all the fattening items from the canteen menu? What should we do? They said, let's do a research. Let's do a survey to find out what is the cause, and then we find a solution. The survey showed that the way the food was displayed in the canteen was very, very attractive. You know, all the desserts in the world were attractively displayed. So you walked into the canteen, the mind was attracted to that. You like ice creams, you have flavors of ice cream. You have cakes, you have pastries, you name it and you have it. And so this was what was the existing arrangement. So the researchers said, can we do one thing? Let's apply our intelligence. Let's move all these desserts. Let's not remove the desserts. We put them in a non-transparent container, so that when you come into the canteen, you can't see anything. You have to ask for it. You want a mango ice cream? Ask for mango ice cream. You will be given. And they did this change. You'll be surprised to see that over a period of few months, the consumption of desserts went down. Why? Basically because the desserts were not available at sight. So the mind automatically got controlled. The moment you don't see, you don't remember. You don't remember, you don't ask. So if you remember, you will ask for only one item. You're not going to go berserk trying to eat all the desserts that are available in the canteen. And it was a great research where we could find, if you apply your intelligence, you can restrain your mind. There was nothing like removing desserts or curtailing, putting a restriction. It was just rearranging, reconstructing the entire offer, which was able to control the mind. Now we come back. We are on the last verse of this session. Here, this is 6.26. Most important for all of us. It says, Yato yato nischalati manas chanchalam astiram tatastato niyamya etad atmani eva vasam nayet. From wherever the mind wanders due to its flickering and unsteady nature, one must certainly withdraw it and bring it back under the control of the self. So what Krishna is saying, it is natural for the mind to wander. It is restless, it is fickle by nature. So we should be aware of it. We should strengthen and sharpen our intelligence using spiritual knowledge to try and control the mind from wandering. I have shown a picture here which says, we all believe on the left side, you have a glass of beer in your hand, you have unrestricted access to the best food in the world, and you think that is freedom. These days, freedom is a very important word. And you think that, by indulging, we are achieving joy, we are achieving peace. But actually, that's not the truth. The truth is completely opposite. Have less, less is more. And your real freedom comes through scriptural studies and path of devotion. These material attractions are at best distractions. They can delay our progress and damage our capacity to progress, because once you pick up the habits of like smoking or drinking, for example, they are not habits which you can easily come out of. It's lifelong and it's a struggle. So getting in is easy, but getting out is difficult. Now, why is the mind wandering? What causes the mind to wander? That is something which we should understand. Now, if you look at the desires, there are types of desires. It's not, all desires are of a kind, which is then it becomes very easy to control or very easy to monitor. So, if you were to look at desires come from vasana, which is the material, lower level, selfish desires. And we carry vasanas from our past thousands of life births. It is not just in this life. If not, why will you see an alcoholic struggling so hard to kick the habit? He knows that alcohol is bad, but can he stop drinking? Very difficult. Why does a smoker who today, if you buy a cigarette pack, it is shown as a picture. You don't have to read the warning, statutory warning. It is shown as a picture. A normal person will get aghast to look at that gory picture. It shows a cancerous person. Even then, ask a smoker, will you give up smoking? No. This is an example of uncontrolled mind and vasana. So these are desires which continue to exist within us. And if you have to get out of these vasanas, you certainly have to take shelter. You should surrender to either scriptures, guru, pious people. Only the spiritual intervention can help you restrain your vasanas. So we should be aware that all desires are not bad. There are desires which are required to live in this world, but there are a few like vasanas which are so adamant, so difficult to remove. We have to take shelter of scriptures. Second part of desires is our swabhava. This is very interesting. It is our core nature. It's like saying you are an introvert. You don't like public company. I am an extrovert. I love public company. You don't like speaking on the stage. I love speaking on the stage. Why is this? Because it's of our swabhava. This is intrinsic, ingrained. We are all gifted with. So you can't act against your nature. So be aware that such desires you must fulfill. Now you take Arjuna. Arjuna had a desire to stop fighting, go to the forest and renounce and pray to God. But Arjuna, Krishna reminded, you can't do that because you are a Kshatriya. You are supposed to fight. You are supposed to protect. So that's the essence of Swabhava. If you take a Brahmana, his strength is only praying to God. You can't ask a Brahmana to take a sword and go to the battle to fight and defend. It's not possible. It's not his intrinsic nature. The third dimension of desire. There are some things which are instinctive. It happens on the spur of the moment. You see fire, you run. Now, these are desires for self-protection. Now, I'll give you another example. Human waste. We have repulsion towards it. But you take a pig or a hog, they welcome human waste. So the swabhava of a human being is to have repulsion towards human waste, but the swabhava of a hog is to welcome human waste. So we should be aware as to what is our swabhava, what is our nature, and accordingly act. Don't try to follow someone else because that's what you like to do. That's when you get diverted, you get distracted, and the mind starts wandering. Now, the fourth element to understand from these desires, what really causes the mind to wander, is impulse. Now, this is the challenge. Vasanas, difficult to overcome, we have to restrain, and impulse. Now, this is what happens. This is unintelligent, unreflexive action. It's not in our control. This is what we have to control. Example of an impulse is that, you are full, but then you are passing by a cake shop. You just say, okay, let me have one cake. You added unnecessary calories. You had enough of drinks, but your friend says, have one more beer. You say, okay, I'll have one more beer. So that is impulse. You don't think, you are on the spur of the moment making an impulsive decision. So if you were to understand these flow of desires, different types of desires, and then you can say that, okay, I will restrain my vasanas. These are desires which are difficult to overcome. Pan out my swabhava. I will play to my strengths. I will not change. Instinctives, they are for self-preservation, self-protection. I will continue to indulge in them, engage in them, no worries. But what is that I will be worried of is my tendency to impulsive decisions. What do shopaholics do? They go to a shop, they just can't control themselves from shopping. They may have their entire wardrobe full, but they want to buy a few more clothes. That is impulse. And that is something which you should take cognizance of and take action to stop. And why does the mind wander? Flow of desires. And the mind has to have some new toy to play with. So it keeps flirting between the five senses. And that's the reason why it becomes fickle, restless, and wanders. So if you were to give it a strong desire, now, how does this mind wander? Another interesting concept is that it is through imagination. So you imagine that by having that cake, I'm really going to enjoy. And that's why you make that decision to have that extra piece of cake. So if you were to ask your mind to spiritualize the imagination, you have achieved a great step towards controlling your mind, controlling your desires. You ask me how. See, there was a Brahmana, again, let us understand the moral through a story. A poor Brahmana existed in Puri. And he was a great devotee of the Lord, but he found that I am poor. He accepted the fact. I have no economic means to either offer prayers or offer prasad to the Lord or offer puja to the Lord. He says, what I will do is I will use my mental faculty of imagination. So for a long period of time, he perfected the art of mental worship, mental imagination. So he used to get up in the morning. He used to imagine that he is inside the Jagannath Puri temple. He is offering prayers to the Lord. He is offering the best of bhogas to the Lord. And he felt that I am praying to the Lord. I am doing everything that I can do in spite of my physical limitations. One day, in his mind, he was preparing the best sweet kheer, a sweet dish to offer to the Lord. And in his mind, he thought, let me check whether the kheer is at the right temperature so that the Lord should not feel it to be too hot when I offer it as prasad. And suddenly, when he was doing it in his mind, it was imagination. He was trying to dip his finger into the imaginary pot of kheer. And suddenly, he woke up because his hand was experiencing severe burning sensation. He was shocked. He said, there is no kheer, there is no cooking. From where did my fingers get burnt? The essence and the moral is the Lord accepts your mental prayers. You may be thinking that I am offering it all through my imagination, but the imagination also reaches the Lord. The Lord is supreme. You choose which way you wish to remember him. He is yours. So so the best way of controlling our mind, controlling the tendency to be wandering around is start putting the mind into imagining devotional pursuit. So what do you imagine? You imagine you're studying Gita from tomorrow. You imagine that you're going to be the best Gita expert in town. It will happen. You imagine that you're offering the best praise to the Lord of your choice in the choice of your temple at any time of your choice. You imagine that you're going to travel to all the places of pilgrimage across the world because you don't physically have the time nor the resource to travel across the world. That is how you can curb, restrain, reconstruct, redirect the energy of the mind and stop it. It wants to wander, you make it wander in the direction you want. And imagination is something which is the strength of the mind. So if you add to this imagination, the spiritual dimension, so you call it spiritualize your imagination, you have achieved a strong step towards controlling your mind. With this, we come to the summary. What did we start with? We started with 5 senses are centered on the mind. So if you have to control your mind, you have to control your senses. The concept of body, mind, and soul is explained in Gita, so which we can relate to in the modern example as knowing the body as the hardware, mind as the software, soul as the user. We went into the verses 6.5, 6.6, which said, controlled mind is a friend, it becomes your mentor. Uncontrolled mind is greatest enemy, it becomes your tormentor. It's not difficult to see what is uncontrolled mind. You have stress, anxiety, depression, suicide, all that is happening because of uncontrolled mind. Your mind becomes your tormentor. The 6.24, 6.25, 6.24, basically, it says determination, no deviation to control the mind, the sparrow story. 6.25, it takes time to be perfect. It is not a magic wand. You can use the 3 R's, redirect, restrict, reconstruct your thoughts to help you control the mind. Spiritualize the imagination to convert the mind to higher taste. Mind in 6.26, mind has a tendency to wander. Bring your mind back. How? To practice. Practice makes the man perfect. Restrain your vasanas, follow swabhava, swadharma, follow your instincts, but avoid impulsive desires. With this, I come to the end of the session. Thank you very much. You can go through this nice prayer by Swami Vivekananda. I'll not read it. I just read the last 8th point, which says, when bhakti enters a man, man becomes human. The soul always knows what to do to heal itself. The challenge is to silence the mind. Thank you very much. And the floor is open for any questions.
Yeah, sir. Sir, I have one question.
Certainly.
Yeah. Sir, you told that there is a point in which we should not have non-veg.
Right.
So what does our fooding habits tends to our control of mind? How does it affect our control of mind?
Very good question. So, and this is the most popular question. And I knew in my mind when I said this, there will be questions. See, if you were to go through Gita, I think in 15th chapter, he talks about the kind of food that you should have. Because there are 3 modes of material nature under which we exist. One is the mode of passion, Rajasic. One is mode of goodness, that is Sattvic. And then there is mode of ignorance, Tamasic. Now, the Lord says, if you want to progress on the path of devotion, you should have Sattvic food. It's nothing to do with vegetarian is good, non-vegetarian is bad, or vice versa. The message is, the principle is, if I want to be on the mode of goodness, I have to eat Sattvic food. Is non-veg Sattvic? It is not Sattvic because it is violence. You're killing an animal to enjoy, which is not Sattvic. It is certainly mode of passion. It's like a Kshatriya going to battle to kill. He's allowed. But if you want to be on the path of devotion, non-vegetarian is a strict no-no.
Right, sir.
That's the reason why you should not have non-veg.
Okay.
And what does the non-vegetarian food do? It's not that it is going to affect your health. I'm not talking about the medicine or medical part of it. It affects your consciousness. You will always be in the mode of passion. And it is very difficult for a person to be in the mode of passion and understand Gita and follow devotion. So first step, what you should do is, it's a journey. You say that, okay, I will practice austerity. What is my austerity? You say that I'm going to sacrifice my love for having non-vegetarian food for Lord. I'm going to sacrifice this. I'm going to surrender myself to him. I want to now be on the mode of goodness. That's your first step. The moment you do that, you will start seeing that your interest of spirituality increases multifold.
And sir, one more thing what I realized is, previously I was located in a different place. When I was in Gujarat.
Okay.
So Gujarat, there was non-veg was seldomly very available. So we could not get non-veg anywhere.
Okay.
So vegetarian food was available. So that was the reason why during my stay in Gujarat, I literally turned to be a vegetarian. So I didn't had non-veg for 2 years.
Okay.
But when I came back to Kolkata, where
Right.
there we have this non-veg everywhere, what I found is this thrust of getting non-veg food got increased, and I started intake of this non-veg food.
Impulse.
Ah,
So that's why we should go through these sessions. Why we should read is, we should identify and immediately tag that, okay, this is an impulsive action. For 2 years, I lived in Gujarat without eating non-vegetarian food. Did I suffer? No. But yes, I like non-veg food. The moment I changed location, went to Calcutta, I started picking up eating non-veg food. It's my impulse. So you are drawn by the mind towards your impulses. That's vasana. So if you get into this first step, so now you have understood, you have identified the cause. I want to be situated on the mode of goodness. So I am not stopping non-vegetarian because my doctor has advised me to. I am stopping non-vegetarian food because of my voluntary desire, love for the Lord. If I want to seek him, I have to follow the path of goodness. There is no shortcut. If I have to practice detachment, I have to do this. So that's how you start telling your mind. And then the mind starts saying, okay, fine, I will not like non-vegetarian food. It takes a period of time, but I have many friends who have moved from non-vegetarian to strict vegetarian, and they are quite happy about it.
This example also matches with that of the Google's, desert example you gave me just now.
Exactly. Use intelligence to control your mind. So all that the mind needs is a trigger. Understand the weakness, reduce them. Identify the strength and nurture them.
Right, sir.
And it is not something, sorry.
Yeah. So in fact, that I realized also, previously what happened is, whenever I say go on a tour, the people say offer drinks. So now that I realized, I have stopped, I have asked those particular person that, no, I would not have drinks. You can have your own drinks. Previously, I was a bit reluctant that if I say no to them, they will say that he is not so extrovert, or he is not dwelling with us. But now I have started to say no. That no, if I have said no, I would not have it. So that control I have brought in. But in this non-veg, again, I have to think of some intelligence to stop this also.
Exactly. And I'll tell you, you first start thinking of it, the mind itself will provide you solutions. It will give you 4 to 5 different ways how you can very easily move out of this habit. That's the strength of the mind.
And there is one more point, sir. Don't get attached.
Right.
Yeah. So, sir, attachment are, I guess, I understand of 2 types. One is, say, materialistic attachment, and another is an emotional attachment.
Right.
So you're talking of both the attachments or only materialistic attachment?
See, the distinction is emotion is part of, went through that, you have perception, then you have emotion, then you have action. So the attachment comes because you allow your mind to walk in that direction. Now, what happened to King Bharata? He got attached to the deer out of pity, out of humanity. He said, I want to save this deer. Is there anything wrong in the reason? No. But what happened was he did not stop his mind after that. What he had to do, he went to the river, he picked up the baby deer, brought it back to the ashram, looked after it. And after that, he could have allowed the deer to go back to the forest. The deer is capable of looking after itself, but he didn't stop. That's the challenge all of us face. We don't know when to stop. Now, for example, I'll give you another example. This will be, it will bring you the concept. See, we have challenges of attachment as we are born in this world. We have parents, we have siblings, we have friends, we have relatives. We have so many areas of being attached to. We are all attached because we are emotional, as you rightly said. To add to that, I have my friend Ramesh here who has a dog as a pet. Now, what did you do? Yes, the pet gives you a lot of joy, pleasure. It loves you. It is loyal to you. But you have added another layer of attraction in your life. So when we have to leave this world, apart from thinking of all the near and dear ones, you also are going to think about the pet. Now, that is what Krishna says. Use your intelligence to make the right choice. Why are you trying to bring home a pet? Is that pet going to give you 1 millimeter of advantage in your spiritual progress? If the answer is no, then why do it? So material, emotional, both are the two faces of the same coin. So you should say, if I'm going to attach, let me attach to loving God. Let me attach myself to loving Gita. Let me attach myself to serving Puri, Jagannath Puri. I have many friends who say that every year during the Rath Yatra, I will go to Jagannath Puri to offer my services. I will pull the Rath. Is there anything wrong in that? It is attachment, but he is attaching himself to the higher cause. Param Drushtva Nivartate. So anything which you do, which is an attachment to the Lord, becomes detachment from material life. And that is what we should be doing, because the reality of life is we all have to leave this behind. We can't carry anything with us. The mind, the subtle body, mind, intelligence, ego is not material. It doesn't die. It comes with us to the next life. That is what Gita has told us. So if you are able to reduce your burden of carry over to the next life, your vasanas will be better. If not, you will continue to have the vasanas, and the vasanas will get, it more difficult progress.
Right. Yes. And one last question, sir.
Please feel free to ask as many as you want. I have no problem.
This question is, sir, see, what happens is there are multiple thoughts which comes to our mind.
Correct.
So to detach ourselves from one thought, what we do, we move on to another purpose. I don't want to think about my personal life, so I move into my professional life, and I work very hard, and that makes me divert my mind from that particular cause to this cause.
Okay.
But again, in this professional life also, it is full of thoughts. So where do I find to control my mind? Because when this professional work goes down, again, this personal thoughts raise up. So I get stuck in between. Means how to control that? I don't want to go into one thought, and I just want to control that thing. Let it be. Anything can be happening, but I am also cool. I would not think much about anything.
See, this is practice. It doesn't happen easy. It's like, what do we do for notifications? The same example applies to you. Thoughts are like rivers. They will keep flowing. Have you ever seen a river stop flowing?
No, sir.
So the thoughts will not stop. Now, we have to decide how much of it we will be consciously aware, how much of it we will ignore, and how many of them we will act on. Because in a day, you can only do a few things, not all things. Not all thoughts can be acted upon. Now, it's like saying that I am sitting in Mumbai, you're sitting in Calcutta, you're saying that, I want to go to meet my parents in my native town. Is it possible? Not possible. It's a thought. It's a desire. So what do? You park it. You say that when I get leave, when my leave is next due, I will plan for this visit. And the mind accepts it. So you will have to categorize, prioritize. The words look very big, but actually they are simple when you apply them. So the essence, practice, first is take a deep breath and say that, oh, well, today my mind is agitated. My mind is overactive. Let me take a deep breath and relax. Now, what we do to control these kind of thoughts, incessant desires, multiple, you can do only so many things. You can do either justice to a task given by your mother at home, or you can do a task given by your boss in the evening. You can't do justice to both. You can do only one. You have to choose. So then it becomes a choice. You have to choose depending on the importance, which is more likely to give me peace of mind. I do that.
Right. So you need to prioritize the thing.
Yes.
Sir, I have a question.
Yeah.
Sir, I feel that imaginary worshipping is really very much effective and positive.
Right.
But on other hand, while doing this, my mind stops me doing this, telling that no, not now. I'm not much pure. I had taken non-veg food yesterday or tomorrow or whatever. So is it a right thing? May we go for this imaginary worshipping anytime, when we actually need help of God, or like this, sir?
Certainly. It's a very good question. See, the power of imagination is we are playing the game of the mind. Now, how does the mind attract us? It gives us imaginative pleasures. I told you, MIND, acronym, I, imagines pleasures. So what we are doing, we are telling the mind is that you imagine the pleasure, and my pleasure is, the like that I love is, I want to spiritualize my imagination. The moment you do that, the mind starts realizing, oh, well, if this man is liking only this, so maybe I have to only do this. It's like that ventriloquist example. The doll will only talk what the ventriloquist wants the doll to talk. Can it talk anything else? It cannot. So it is the same example for us. So we become the ventriloquist and the mind becomes the doll.
Yes, sir.
Make sense?
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Shaim, it's Neville here.
Yes, Neville.
Just to add to some of the comments I heard here, is that, the mind is thinking 24 hours a day. Even when you're sleeping, it's thinking.
Right.
So, just to put it in a nutshell, your mind is like a garden, right? You're going to get the plants, you're going to get the weeds in this garden.
Perfect.
And we need to maintain we got to maintain this garden.
Yes.
Now the weeds will be the negative stuff that comes in your head, and the plants will be the positive stuff that you have in your garden. So you got to become a master gardener.
Yes.
So if something comes negative into your mind, so you ask yourself, this is negative stuff that's come in my mind. What you need to do is label it, get rid of it. Stop thinking about it, get it out of the way, and concentrate on the garden that you are maintaining, right? And the other thing I want to add is, everything starts with the thought. From a thought, then things start developing. People just don't, come out of the blue and do things. So, you got your subconscious mind as well there. The subconscious mind does not know what is constructive and destructive. We need to tell it what to do. So if you're going to become a bad person, if you tell it to keep on, if you keep on telling yourself, I want to become a bad person, you become a bad person. If you keep on telling it, I want to become a positive person, I want to do X, Y, and Z, or want to study or whatever, it'll do that for you too as well. So it cannot distinguish what is constructive and what is destructive. So the mind will do what you tell it to do. or the subconscious mind. And everything becomes habit. Whatever you want to do, they say anything you do for 21 days becomes habit as well. So we got to keep on conditioning this mind, because it's, as I said, it's the biggest trickster. Sometimes it'll make you think the worst possible thing that can happen to you. And if you really think about your past history as well, how many times we thought the worst thing possible could happen to us, but it actually never happened. And we stressed and worried just for nothing sometimes. So we got, just to, in closing, we got to become master gardeners, and the mind will do what you tell it to do.
Perfect. Thank you very much, Neville. Very nicely explained.
Yeah, sure.
Thank you, sir.
Any other questions?
Sir,
Your voice is breaking. Some issues. Now it's better. Yeah. Can you hear me?
Anything else do you suggest, sir, during this meditation time?
1 second. I missed your first part of the question. Can you repeat it, please?
Yeah, sir. So my first of the part of the question is, during this yoga in the sense physical yoga.
Right.
So I practice meditation. So meditation, I do Anulom Vilom, then I do Brahma Gayatri, and then I chant Om.
Very good.
So after that, is there anything else? And this I do it for 15 minutes.
Okay.
So anything else which would help me to control, or anything else would you like to add on to it?
I think you are doing wonderfully well. It's just that if you have the time, try and increase the chanting if possible. Now, I will give you an example, because all of us work on the principle of benchmark. So I do meditation, but not by chanting Om. I chant the Hare Krishna mantra. And when I started this journey of spiritual realization, I used to do it 108 times. That is 1 round in a day. Then it progressively went to, because my guru told me that in ISKCON, you have to achieve minimum 16 rounds. So 16 rounds is a big ask in our professional lives. But it took me 3-4 years and I have mastered it. And today, minimum 16 rounds, whatever our guru has said, we will do it. And it takes me nothing less than 1 hour 30 to 1 hour 40 minutes. So I wake up early in the morning, 4:30, 4:45, I'm chanting. It takes me up till 6:30. But from 6:30, I'm completely involved in my day-to-day office activities and whatnot. So some learning for you is, if you can increase your chanting meditation time, that will be more beneficial to you.
Right, sir. Okay.
But as it is, you're doing well.
Okay, sir.
Any other question?
Namaskar, Prabhuji.
Namaskar.
Prabhuji, what is the difference between Man and Chaitanya?
Man and Chaitanya. See, Man is mind. Chaitanya can refer to consciousness. So the way they related is, Man, that is mind, is the root of Chaitanya. R-O-U-T-E. If you want to influence, change your consciousness, you can do it to your mind, through your Man.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions? Alok, Ramesh, Nandita?
Oh, great, boss. I think you explained it very well. Especially the examples today were really exemplary. Farmer, sparrow, ventriloquist, Google, amazing examples. Now I am very clear in my mind on how to control the mind.
Thank you, Alok.
यस सर, जैसे मेरे को मैं आज जो ये इसमें इसके आपका जो प्रवचन से मेरे को जो समझ में लगा, मेरे को बहुत कुछ अभी प्रैक्टिस करना है सर. सो आई नीड टू डू लॉट मोर थिंग एंड मुझे इटर्नली बहुत कुछ सीखना है सर. सो इट्स वेरी गुड फॉर मी एंड इट इज वेरी इनलाइटिंग फॉर मी सर. थैंक यू सो मच सर.
Thank you, Ramesh Ghosh. See, all of us are sadhakas. We are, practitioners. Sadhana karne wale sadhak hote hain. So you don't have to feel that, no, I have a lot to do. All of us have a lot to do.
Right sir. Yes sir.
So we are all in the same boat.
तो बॉस, आज के हमारे अटेंडीज हैं, मैं इनका डिटेल्स आपको दे दूंगा, तो क्या आप अगली बार इनको भी इनवाइट भेज देंगे क्या?
Definitely यार. सबका मुझे वो मोबाइल नंबर भेज दो, मैं सबको इनवाइट भेज देता हूँ.
ठीक है, थैंक यू.
Santosh, you have any question?
No, but it was indeed very insightful. And like every time when we involve into, we feel like we are progressing towards goals. So I'm very much thankful that at particular interval you are coming with such insightful nuggets and all, what we can say. So that's really nice.
Thank you, Santosh. Thank you for your patient listening. Thank you for your participation. Thank you for your encouragement. So we both are part of this journey.
This was the best ever session, I would say.
Thank you, Alok. Thank you. In fact, if I were to share a Gita wisdom with you, we should look at both with equal vision. It is called Samadarshina. One session may be very good, one session may not be very good. So you don't get very happy when it goes good. Don't be very unhappy if it doesn't go good. Like Krishna says, both are the same. They are relative. We live in the absolute world. In spiritual world, there is everything absolute. No one is rich, no one is poor. No one is happy, no one is sad. So we should try to go there. But thank you very much for your encouragement.
That is the final goal. That somehow if we achieve, then probably everything will be on the same balance. We can have it, be it summer or winter, we will be in the same phase and whatever, because Gita is knowledge, and knowledge will means it is not about what we are liking, what we are not liking, what is right for us. This is the most important thing.
Yes. Thank you, Santosh. Very well said. And please do ask any area of doubt so that, that becomes our topic for the next session.
Sure.
If there are no questions, then I once again thank you all for participation, taking time off your busy schedules on a Sunday evening and joining this Gita Wisdom session. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Hare Krishna.
Thank you. Hare Krishna.
Thank you so much, sir.
Thank you.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji.
Hare Krishna.